Hi everyone, how are you all doing this week? My name is Sophia and welcome back to my channel. This week I had a completely different video planned, but there has been this crazy new documentary that's been circulating the internet and Netflix. It is called Seaspiracy. And this week I decided let's do a deep dive, get it? Into this film, which has been stirring up quite a lot of words and dialogue online. Today I'm just going to share my reasons why I think it's a great introduction to ocean issues if people who have maybe never really learned about the ocean or who are not familiar with the issues affecting our ocean, but it is laced with a lot of misinformation that we do really need to detangle. So just a quick reminder before I get into it, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. I try to post once every 2 weeks approximately, or whenever my school and work schedule allows me to. Alright friends, before we get started, I want to give us a second to get our cozy drink of choice. So before I delve deeper into this film, I do want to acknowledge some things that the film did really well. Namely, because the documentary scanned a lot of very surface level ocean issues in the span of 1.5 hours, some of these issues being things like human rights issues in some fisheries around the world, corruption, bycatch, mislabeling of seafood products, plastic pollution, and many others. I do think it is a very good introduction to, as I mentioned, people who maybe don't have that much exposure to ocean issues, or people who are willing to learn more about the issues facing our oceans. I think it's also for people who consume seafood and are wondering about where that might be coming from. It's a great jumping off to understand how corrupt our seafood and fisheries industries can be and are in certain parts of the world, and also how that seafood industry has the capacity to affect not only the environment but also health and human rights issues. So it really highlighted successfully why, with all this commercial fishing going on worldwide, how urgent it is that we need to come together and find a solution. However, because of its entertainment type genre, the generalization that the documentary made to me seemed quite insensitive to how intersectional sustainable fishing is as an issue and how it didn't really offer a complete picture. And I honestly don't blame them, because you can't really fit everything into 1.5 hours of film. That is really hard. So I'll just break down a couple things that I found problematic with this documentary. So the first thing that was lacking for me in this documentary was that it was lacking credible scientific evidence. And I'll give you a few examples. So throughout the documentary, they mentioned the statistic that by 2048, we'll have no seafood in the ocean. And this was first published by a paper by Worm and colleagues in 2009 that has since been retracted, actually. And they have actually republished a different paper saying that, like, never mind, if we do implement sustainable fisheries management, many regions in the world will not see that fate, which is quite hopeful. And it really illustrates that there are many areas of the world that experience overfishing differently than others. The second thing is shark-driven trophic cascades. So they illustrated that little pyramid with the sharks on top and then the little fishes on the bottom and then phytoplankton, and showing how if sharks are gone, then that has repercussions down the food chain. And that has actually been debated in the literature according to several sources that I've seen. So although yes, sharks are a super duper important species in the environment, their trophic cascades are debated. And for me, what was really confusing was that they then took that and applied it to seabird populations, because seabird populations can be in decline not just because of sharks. Seabirds can suffer due to mainly plastic pollution, changes in the environment and prey, lots of different kinds of reasons, and the connection between seabird decline and shark decline wasn't super clear for me. The claims that they made about plastic pollution, although there were a couple claims that they made about plastic pollution that were a tad bit misleading. They did put a correct number though this time, that 46% of plastic, I think, in our ocean gyres, our fishing nets, which is true, but it's 46% by weight, which is a very important distinction. The way that they portrayed the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is that it's kind of like a floating island of plastic, which is not really true. It is concentrated in an area, but it's not like a landmass of plastic, which is what I think a lot of people imagine. They also mentioned that 85% of our oxygen comes from phytoplankton, which, as a sort of phytoplankton scientist, is not true. It's more about 50%. So moving on to the second thing that was lacking in this documentary is I don't think the way that they interviewed people and portrayed organizations did them any justice. There were a lot of issues with the way that they interacted with people and organizations in this film. A lot of people and places that they filmed were done so without prior permits and consent. I saw an interesting tweet from Dr. Catherine Hicks, which you can read right here, basically saying that she doesn't condone what she said in that interview. There were also some issues with the way that they portrayed some very important conservation organizations such as Oceana and the Plastic Pollution Coalition. I feel like the film really glossed over the decades of really important work that those organizations have been doing. They also just were made to look kind of like the bad guy when they just won't flat out say that people should stop eating fish, because that's not the overall goal of a conservation organization anyways. And they also spread some misinformation about the Marine Stewardship Council certification, the MSC Blue Label that we were talking about. In truth, it can actually take a fishery many, many years to obtain this certification. It is not easy, and also this certification can be revoked at any time. So basically, a lot of the people being interviewed seemed to be put on the spot and really unprepared for what they were being interviewed for. And also, it kind of just seemed like every single organization, government, NGO, fisherman that they interviewed is bad, except for Sea Shepherd. The third thing is I didn't agree with their representation of people of color and also their weird colonialism-esque bias, I guess, in this documentary. So they glossed over a lot of really small-scale fisheries that exist in the world. It was a bit strange the way that they represented Asian fishers. And honestly, I would have loved to see a lot more expert interviews from around the world, because those exist and they are the best people to interview for the issues that they want to make this film about. And it just really glosses over that the fact that seafood is such an important commodity for many communities around the world. It is literally their livelihood. You can't say that these are the bad guys because they can't stop fishing. So this leads me to my next point, is that they really glossed over the importance and the issues surrounding small-scale fisheries. So they kind of generalized all fisheries as bad guys, and what really happens out in the real world is that many small-scale fishers actually have to go out farther and fish illegally in places because commercial fishermen have kind of rampaged everything, and we're seeing this more and more. And this documentary really generalized that kind of like, all fisheries are really corrupt. No such thing as sustainable seafood or sustainable fishing, which is not true. The technology that is used on boats to enforce regulations has actually gotten a lot more advanced in the last couple years, and so misreporting definitely does happen, but not so much in the way that it is being misrepresented in the film. The next thing I wanted to talk about is aquaculture. We absolutely need aquaculture if we are to address the increasing issue of world hunger and increasing protein demand, and especially now that fish stocks are decline. In fact, a lot of the seafood that you already do eat does come from aquaculture, mainly things like seaweeds, shellfish, freshwater fish like carps and tilapia. So, and aquaculture has been around for thousands and thousands of years and can absolutely be done sustainably. Of course, it's not perfect, and there are many ways in which we can make it more sustainable, but there are so many examples of sustainable aquaculture around the world. This could easily be another video or 10, so let me know if this is something that interests you. But basically, some of the things that the documentary mentioned about aquaculture, especially how food for aquacultured finfish comes from wild fish meal. This is absolutely true, but there has been huge incentives lately in technology to develop ways of creating fish meal out of plant-based sources or algae-based sources, which put less pressure on the environment. And also there has been incentive to farm more herbivorous fish like tilapia. What a lot of people haven't touched on is there also been a lot of development of integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, IMTA, which is really cool. goal. And although it's very new, there have been really small successful case studies around the world. So basically, this is taking a lot of different species and farming them together so that nutrients and waste can be recycled, putting less pressure on the environment. So for example, farming seaweeds, oysters, and salmon together in an area. Another thing I wanted to talk about that the film didn't really talk about was the benefits of MPAs, marine protected areas. So this is something I wish that the documentary really delved further into, because again, many places in the world have had great success stories in sustainable fishing near MPAs. And the reason that they are beneficial to conservation and fisheries is because of the spillover effect. So if you have an MPA in one area and a fishery adjacent to it, recovery in fish stocks in the MPA, some of those fish spill over into the fishery, and that can lead to better fisheries management. I also wanted to address some consumer habits. They really seem to specify that we really need to change consumer spending and habits instead of putting pressure on large organizations. Both are important. They really didn't specify the difference between small scale, artisanal, and commercial fisheries, and they just seem to really generalize their message across all of these types. Sometimes, which does make it false in certain cases. That is misinformation. And there are so many examples of sustainable fisheries across the world. And oftentimes, fisheries and fishermen are some of the best partners that we have in ocean conservation because they're up close and personal, and they care about the ocean because it is their livelihood. And in general, they do have a close relationship with the sea compared to me, a scientist who spends a lot of time in the lab. So the last thing I wanted to critique was their overall message to stop eating seafood. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with quitting seafood if you're doing it in a safe and healthy manner. But the thing is, people who do this usually have access to Western supplements and algae-based omega-3s, which are not available worldwide. And it neglected millions and billions of people who rely on seafood as their primary source of protein. And also people who rely on fisheries economically for their livelihoods. Simply saying do not eat fish really dismisses the fact that we have so much to do in terms of sustainable fisheries management. And when we do manage fishing zones sustainably, we can reap so much benefit economically as well, while also maintaining the health of the environment. Sometimes banning something outright is also not the best solution. Take, for example, the bans on whale hunting in the Canadian Arctic. That really hurts the indigenous communities there. So this documentary really focused on a sort of, here's my top issue in the ocean, when there are other severe threats to the oceans, such as climate change and ocean acidification. For example, if everyone stopped eating fish, it would do nothing to solve the coral bleaching that's going on, and that's threatening biodiversity hotspots, which do have an effect on fisheries. As the equator warms, species in the equator will move north. That could also affect fisheries. And saying that there's no such thing as sustainable seafood, well, the issues that they highlighted in the film are often very regional and do not apply to every location or type of fishery. I have a personal counterexample. I have had the privilege of tasting lionfish in the Atlantic Caribbean, and that is a very invasive species of fish that is delicious, and it is locally caught by divers with spearfishing, one by one. That's a very delicious example of sustainable fisheries. So what now? I have some more documentaries that you can watch in the description that are great for further topics of exploration. I think we should advocate for education for ocean science in a younger age. That has certainly contributed to my interest in ocean science. And we need to be educated in the seafood that we consume, both wild caught and farmed. There are many certifications and programs that can help us with this. My favorite is the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch. It's an app on your phone. It's also a pamphlet that you can download and print if you're into that. And doing research about the underutilized species in your area can also be of use to you if you want to eat more sustainable seafood. Those are all the thoughts. I have Seaspiracy. I probably forgot a couple, but I think this was a very well-rounded overview of my critiques. Let me know if you agree with me or disagree with me. Honestly, I'd be happy to discuss with you down in the comments. If you would like to see more from me, don't forget to hit subscribe. And also, if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like and share with a friend who also watched Seaspiracy and would like to learn more about ocean-related topics. Anyways, I hope you're all staying safe out there, healthy, and I will see you all next time. And I will go finish my tea now. All right, bye.